Myself, Dr. Sudha Sethi, Assistant Professor, Department of Clinical Hematology, SA Medical College, Cuttack. My topic is anticoagulants in COVID-19 management, reference to NOACs, new oral anticoagulants. COVID-19 is characterized by high rate of thromboembolic complications, even in the absence of clinically relevant macrothrombi. The balance between anticoagulation strategy and thrombotic and bleeding complication is complex. Most of the randomized control trials and observational studies are going on. The present guidelines based on consensus statement and expert opinion. There are limitations of available guideline, like there is no definite recommendation of thromboprophylaxis in outpatients, home isolation and post-hospital discharge. This is a figure from Lancet published in last month. There is very nice correlation between symptoms, inflammatory reaction, coagulation markers and thrombotic events and pathogenesis. A good immune system controls 80% of infection leads to mild symptoms, but in 20% there is high burden of viral replication causes apoptosis of pneumocytes and endothelial cells, which causes platelet activation. There is release of coagulation factors like tissue factor and von Willebrand factor, which produces cytokines, chemokines, and there is chemotaxis, which leads to formation of NETs and there is complement activation. At the same time, there is hypoxia also contributes to the system to the hypercoagulable state by increasing the tissue factors, and there is increase further inflammatory process, which leads to microangiopathy of the pneumocytes and there is formation of microthrombi. At this stage, body tries to maintain the balance between procoagulatory and inflammatory, coagulatory and anticoagulatory process and pro-inflammatory and anti-inflammatory process. But in 5% cases, there is derailment of pro-inflammatory process which causes cytokine storm. This cytokine storm further fuels the pro-inflammatory process, which leads to there is systemic endotheliitis, capillary leakage, organic dysfunction, and there is overt coagulation function dysfunction. There is more production of macrothrombi and microthrombi. This causes this is a correlation between clinical course and observed coagulation parameters. The clinical course divided into 4 stages, stage 1 to stage 4. The mild in the stage 1 is mild and the inflammatory reaction also mild, and the coagulation markers only D dimer is increased 2 to 3 times of ULN, and here prothrombin time, fibrinogen time and total platelet count remains normal, and there is thrombotic events are limited to pulmonary lesion region. Next is stage 2, where there is needs of respiratory support, inflammatory reaction is pronounced, there is increase of D dimers, maybe 3 to 6 times of the upper limit of normal. There is mild increase of fibrinogen, mild increase of prothrombin and prothrombin time, and there is maybe some mild decrease of total platelet count, and here increase of microthrombi and macrothrombi are there. Next is critically ill. The patients may need organ support, and there is a cytokine storm, and D dimer may be increased 6 times of upper limit of normal, and fibrinogen may be highly elevated, and there is prolonged PT and APTT, TPC may be decreased, and there is high incidence of micro and macrothrombi. For stage 4 is reserved, and here the thrombotic events are unknown. This is also supported by different autopsy findings, and there is in autopsy findings there is diffuse alveolar damage, edema and hyaline membrane pneumocytes and fibroblasts, and thrombosis of small and medium size pulmonary arteries. So, what is the prevalence of venous thromboembolism? Recent meta-analysis in patients with COVID-19 showed an estimated overall prevalence of venous thromboembolism, that is 14.1%. In patients in ICU in routine screening, that is 45.6%, but in non-ICU, that is 23.0%. The VTE prevalence was higher in studies that used ultrasound screening, that is 40.3%, than in studies that did not done ultrasound, that is 9.5%. Along with thromboembolism, there is atrial thrombotic events such as myocardial and cerebral infarctions, that is 3%. In non-hospitalized patients with COVID-19, those with mild disease, the incidence of venous thromboembolism is unknown. This is a table which from the different countries where the COVID-19 has registered maximum. These are all retrospective studies except one which is a prospective study from France, and all are ICU patients except one from Italy, that is in an inpatient department, and the VTE rates from 16.7 to 69%. There are two groups of NOACs or DOACs, that is direct oral anticoagulants. One is that inhibits activated factor 10, such as these groups of drugs are rivaroxaban, apixaban and endoxan. Then other groups is direct thrombin inhibitor, that is dabigatran. These oral anticoagulants have high safety and greater efficacy, and they do not need to regular monitoring. But while prescribing, one should be cautious about to avoid the drug to drug reaction, and should be avoided in poor renal function. Many trials, many studies have done to know the efficacy of oral anticoagulants as therapeutic or prophylaxis in management of COVID-19. This is a study published in American College of Cardiology. This is a retrospective, this is a randomized study of 615 patients, and on stable patients they have given rivaroxaban 20 milligram OD, and unstable patient enoxaparin 1 milligram per kg per day, and they have given prophylaxis of rivaroxaban 20 milligram once daily after discharge of hospital for 30 days. And this study concludes that there is no improvement of clinical outcome and increased bleeding compared with in-hospital prophylactic anticoagulation. This is a retrospective study published in Cardiovascular and Metabolic Science. They have taken 41 patients, and they are received supportive treatment along with rivaroxaban and apixaban in different doses. They have concluded that oral anticoagulation is safe and effective in COVID-19 ambulatory patients, especially with thrombotic risk factors. This is a nationwide register-based cohort study in Sweden, February to May 2020, to assess whether ongoing direct oral anticoagulant use was associated with reduced risk of hospital admission or ICU admission. They have taken more than 1 lakh patients and concluded that ongoing DOAC use was not associated with reduced risk of severe COVID-19, indicating that prognosis would not be modified by early outpatient DOAC initiation. This is a descriptive and analytical study in patients who presented pneumonia due to COVID-19 in April and May 2020, who received low molecular weight heparin during their hospital stay and are discharged with rivaroxaban 10 milligram per day for 2 months. And they have concluded in this group of patients, the incidence of thrombotic and hemorrhagic events was low. So, the thromboprophylaxis scheme used in patients with recovered pneumonia due to COVID-19 is recommended. Rivaroxaban is safe to use like thromboprophylaxis. This is about dabigatran. Dabigatran, the oral anticoagulant of choice, are discharged in patients with non-valvular atrial fibrillation and COVID-19 infection. These are all trials and studies, but in the real world scenario, when a COVID positive patient came, they either treated in outpatient, or if they are in stage 2 or moderate, they get admitted in the hospital ward, and from hospital ward they may be discharged or go to home, or if severe, then admitted in ICU, then discharged and go to home, or they do not. These are 2 occasions, outpatient and discharge patients, where you need to give oral anticoagulants. What are the international guidelines says? There are many guidelines like NIH, ISTH, AS, CHEST, and WHO. All these guidelines says for the outpatient, there is no recommendation for the outpatient thromboprophylaxis. But ISTS in August 2020 says that all patients should be evaluated regularly, D-dimers should be measured. If more than 1500 nanogram per ml, then low molecular weight heparin prophylaxis should be considered. For outpatient, for hospital discharge, all guidelines says that there is no routine thromboprophylaxis recommended. But NIH said there is extended thromboprophylaxis considered if the patient is in high risk and low risk bleeding. For the concluding my topic, for outpatient or home isolation patients, NIH said that in non-hospitalized patients with COVID-19, there are currently no data to support the measurement of coagulation markers like D-dimers, prothrombin time, platelet count and fibrinogen. And for non-hospitalized patient with COVID-19, anticoagulants and antiplatelet therapy should not be initiated for the prevention of venous thromboembolism or arterial thrombosis unless the patient has other indication for the therapy or is participating in a clinical trial. And all these recommendations are A3, means strong recommendation. What is the risk of thrombosis in post-discharge patients? Usually in non-COVID hospitalized medically ill patients, their increased risk of thrombosis is within 90 days. But in COVID patient, there is 2.6% in first 90 days after hospital discharge of the patient who did not use anticoagulant therapy or prophylaxis. For the post-hospital discharge thromboprophylaxis, as for the recommendation, patients with moderate to severe disease and fulfilling any one of the following criteria would be the ideal candidate for post-discharge of thromboprophylaxis, like modified improved VTE or MIB score more than 4. If MIB is more than 2 with a D-dimer value is more than 2, then also it is preferred, it is prescribed or preferred drugs are rivaroxaban 10 mg once a day or apixaban 2.5 mg 2 times per day. If renal insufficiency is there, then warfarin is the preferred over drugs with INR monitoring. What is extended thromboprophylaxis? FDA recommends use of rivaroxaban 10 mg per daily for 31 to 39 days. American College of Cardiology suggested extended thromboprophylaxis with low molecular weight heparin or DOACs for a maximum period of 45 days in case of high risk VTE such as D-dimer level more than 2 times the upper limit of normal or presence of active cancer. The SCC ISTS suggests duration of 14 to 30 days for thromboprophylaxis. When there is a switching to NOACs, COVID-19 outpatients receiving warfarin who are in isolation and thus unable to have INR monitoring may be candidates for switching to new oral anticoagulant therapy. Patients receiving warfarin who have a mechanical heart valve, ventricular assist device, valvular atrial fibrillation or antiphospholipid antibody syndrome who are lactating should continue treatment with warfarin. Hospitalized patients with COVID-19 who are taking anticoagulant or antiplatelet therapy for underlying medical conditions should continue this treatment unless significant bleeding develops or other contraindications are present. The recommendation in pregnancy and lactation, the American College of Obstetrician and Gynecologists said that no data for or against thromboprophylaxis in the setting of COVID-19 in pregnancy. D-dimer level may not be a reliable predictor because it is already increased in pregnancy. Low molecular weight heparin is recommended rather than unfractioned heparin for the prevention and treatment of VTE in pregnancy. Direct acting anticoagulants are not routinely used during pregnancy due to lack of safety data in pregnant individuals. VTE prophylaxis after hospital discharge is not recommended. My take home message is for outpatients and post-hospital discharge, pharmacological thromboprophylaxis is not routinely recommended. Non-critically ill hospital admitted patients, a therapeutic dose of low molecular weight heparin might improve clinical outcome. For the critically ill, same treatment does not improve clinical outcome and prophylactic dose should be recommended. Thank you.